Welcome to Monday Morning Critic Podcast. Here is Derek Thomas.
Once in a decade, massive solar storms invade our atmosphere, disrupting global communications.
Darren, it's your dad's old ham radio. Let's go over to the den, huh? Plug it in.
And causing unexplained phenomenon.
W2QYV. This is Frank Sullivan.
Hello? What did you say your name was?
Frank Sullivan.
Is this some kind of joke?
That will allow John Sullivan to talk to his father.
What do you say we tame this Bronco, huh? You and me, spirit and guts.
Who's been dead for 30 years.
But how could it be?
I don't know. But we gotta be talking off the mother sunspot of all time. I've missed you so much. Well, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your life. I'm a cop. You're third generation firefighter. Come on, I thought you were gonna grow out of that cop phase.
What's going on, Satch?
Frank says that he's talking to Johnny on the radio in the future.
Hey, little chief. There's somebody I want you to talk to.
Good night, John.
Good night there, Chief.
Oh, my God.
Hello? Something's wrong. Something we did changed the past.
Something happened to Mom.
Your mother, what?
No, she was murdered.
We gotta do something and try to stop this guy. I may not know who he is, but I know where he's gonna be and what he's gonna do before he gets there.
Do I call the police?
They're not gonna believe me.
You got his prints.
I want you to hide that wallet.
Somewhere where nobody's gonna find it for the next 30 years.
The window seat in the dining room.
It's in! I got it!
You gotta give me something I can believe.
We've got to catch him in the act. And you can make that happen, Dad.
I'm not a cop. I'm a firefighter.
We can do it together. Remember spirit and guts?
Gut. I love you, son. I love you too, Dad.
Welcome to Monday Morning Critic Podcast. I am Derek Thomas. This is episode 209. Today's guest is cinematographer Alar Kivilo. Alar's filmography is absolutely amazing. Just a wonderful interview, a wonderful conversation with a guy that I highly respect. Some of his body of work we'll go into in a moment. It's just amazing. His filmography is outstanding, to say the least. But I led into this with a trailer from the 2000 movie Frequency that starred Dennis Quaid and Henry Cavill. An absolutely underrated classic. I can't believe it's 20 years now. But I miss that old school trailer, right? That voice of Don, I think his last name is LaFontaine. Just one of those just epic voices. And if you go back even further, I lead off my podcast with a man who has a similar type voice, has done a lot of commercials, has done some movies, I believe. I believe he's kind of that rising star in that Don LaFontaine mold, the voice actor category, if you will. So let me just talk. Frequency, by the way, it's not just a random trailer I played. It's part of Alar Kivilo's filmography. Some other movies in Alar's filmography are A Simple Man, The Blindside, Frequency, as we just mentioned, Lake House, Hart's War, Taking Chance, Bad Teacher. I mean, it goes on and on. He's done some really special movies, and we always talk about the importance of cinematography. My God, I mean, this man and I say this during the interview, has a real eclectic body of work. I mean, he's somebody that can do a comedy and a drama and a war movie and just be all over the place, a sports movie and Blindside. It says a lot about their abilities. It speaks volumes about what they're capable of. And one of the things, and I'll pat myself on the back for this one thing. I'm really proud. I shouldn't say pat myself. I'm proud that my guests are eclectic, just like Alar's filmography is. I have a very eclectic group of guests. They're actors, they're cinematographers, they're directors, they're screenwriters. I got some athletes coming on next week. I've got authors. So I really want to give people the complete circle of filmmaking. It's not the same actor over and over and over again. I think I have something, I truly believe, everyone says it, and everyone else has a podcast, but I believe I have a podcast that really comes from a lot of angles and allows you to appreciate movie score composers I've had too. That just comes to mind. But it allows you to soak in all the pieces it takes to make this huge puzzle that we call movies, right? So that's what I think, and I hope my podcast does. And from the looks of it lately, and from the last 4 or 5 years, people have kind of appreciated that, and that means the world to me. Whether this stays as my humble little secret, or our humble little secret, or it gets to bigger heights, which would be great. I think I've created something that's special, and I'm proud of that. And I'm proud that you guys are listening. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. This is being dropped right before Thanksgiving. So if you're listening to this before Thanksgiving, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, a safe Thanksgiving with you and your family and your loved ones. I know people say that so much that it's generic, but I sincerely mean that. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Appreciate every minute. If you have a father, a mother, children, whatever it is, appreciate every person that sits with you at that table. Don't take it for granted. Don't assume they're going to be there next year, and don't assume that every moment is a given, because it's not. And I'm certainly not one to preach. I'm certainly not going to want to speak on his high horse. But I have to tell you, as the years go by, not that I didn't appreciate things in the past, but I think. I notice more now. I'm more appreciative now. I think I value time a bit better now that I'm a bit older. I do. I think so. Anyways, that's a conversation perhaps for another time. But if you do have Thanksgiving dinner, please all the best for me. And please keep listening to the podcast. I appreciate that part of it, certainly. So today's guest, Alar Kivilo. Before I get to that, if you are interested, you can follow me on Instagram, Monday Morning Critic Podcast on Instagram, or Monday Morning Critic. On Twitter, it's MDM Critic. On Facebook, if you want to follow me, it's Monday Morning Critic Podcast. If you are so compelled to leave a review, Apple, you can do it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. You can obviously listen to this on any form. Obviously, you found that part of it out. So if you want to drop me an email, which many of you have, it is mondaymorningcriticpodcast@gmail.com. And I've received some very sweet emails, and people have reached out and wanted to come on the podcast as guests. And not that I'm anything special, not that my podcast is anything special. I'm proud of it. I work hard on it. But for me, I know there's other podcasters out there that either pay a service to get them guests. That's not who I am. I reach out to every guest personally. But I can't just take random guests and interview them, right? Because Alar's work, so take Frequency. I remember watching the movie with my dad. I remember bawling my eyes out. And a huge part of that movie is the cinematography. So when Alar comes on and I'm talking to Alar, I'm talking to Alar from a place of love, from a place of admiration, from a place of just pure joy. And he's somebody I want to talk to. He's somebody I want to converse with. Because I can only, for my podcast, I'm speaking for me personally, I can only speak with an actor. There's A-list actors that I could not have conversations with because they're very talented, they're very good. But if I don't like their work, I don't know how I could have that conversation. Like, there's no passion behind it. There's no love behind it. I mean, and all my podcasts, all the interviews I have come with at least 3, 4, 5 hours worth of research. There's just no way that I can interview somebody that I don't have admiration and respect for. Not, I shouldn't say respect, but a feeling in my heart that I really want this person on the podcast to talk about their work. I've had people that have won Academy Awards reach out. I've had people that are well known reach out to me. But personally, not like I said, not that it's anything special, but anyone I interview is somebody that I really admire and really love. And know that we're at episode 209. Just know there's over 200 people that I've interviewed. Every single one, I love their work. That's why they're here. So if nothing else, if my voice is annoying, if everything else is annoying, but you appreciate the questions and you appreciate the guests, just know that nothing is random. I don't pay a monthly fee to have this service reach out and give me these random guests from random shows. That's just not me. I would make a shitty reporter. I could not be a reporter. I could not be like somebody that's forced to interview just random people or people that are in the news or what have you, it would have to be just people I admire. That's for me, that's the only way. And there's a big difference when you listen to podcasts. Take mine versus there's a bunch in my category, TV and film interviews. Listen to some of those podcasts. It's the same interview time and time and time again. Who is your inspiration? What got you into it's the same old thing, acting. Where are you from? I'm from New York. Oh, how about them Giants? It's the same interview every single time. And many of the podcasts in my category, they are clones of each other. They get the same type of guests from a guest service. They don't do any of their own work. They pay a company overseas to drive up the downloads, so it looks like they're a really popular podcast when they are not. They pay for reviews on iTunes, and I've said all this stuff before. But I take pride at the fact that I remain authentic. I remain real. I'm genuine. I'm honest. I don't do any of these other things that podcasts in my category do, right? I mean, paying for guests and paying to drive up downloads and paying for people to listen and paying for somebody to leave you phony reviews on iTunes. It's just all nonsense. And that's something I cannot do. So when people come to listen to my podcast, when they come to download, I want to give them something outside of this rambling here that I've been doing, but I want to give them something to listen to. I want to give you something that is worth your precious time. And I think I've done that. And I'm really proud of that. So enough with rambling there. And I do try to change up the questions. I try to ask questions that are different, are genuine, something I'm curious about, not that same old thing. And I'll give you an example. I was listening to Howard Stern, who's a great interviewer. He is fantastic. So he's had, when I run trails in the woods. I'm not a good runner by any means. I mean, I have a good work ethic. I get myself out there. I do 3, 4, 5 miles, 5 days a week. Just a dude with a beer belly trying to make it a little bit smaller, right? But I run. And when I run, I listen to interviews. And one of the guys I listen to all the time is Howard Stern. And the last 4 guests that I've listened to that he's had Elton John, he's had Matthew McConaughey, he's had Wolfgang Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen's son, and he's had Eddie Vedder, the lead singer of Pearl Jam. So I'm listening to these interviews, and Howard does a great job. And I almost think he's to the point where he's a little bit too refined. Like, he's very creative. I'm not comparing him to those hacky podcast hosts in my category I was talking about before. But he's good in the way his approach is, but he's become almost... I don't know if he's doing the interview because he's curious anymore or because he wants to be known as asking great questions. Like, do you really wonder about Elton John's background, or are you asking him a question because you think it's going to resonate with the audience? Like, I feel like as an interviewer, you have to treat it like a conversation. Forget the quote-unquote word interview, right? Just look at it as a conversation. Like, I always say this to my guests when I speak to them, when I contact them, like 2 people in a bar having a beer. That's the way I like to talk about it, and that's the way I think I handle my interviews. Nothing phony, nothing fake, just real. But anyway, going back to Howard, he's got these interviews with these 4 amazing guys, okay? And one of the similar questions he asked in all of these interviews was around childhood trauma. In Elton's case, it was his dad. In Matthew McConaughey's case, it was his mom and his dad. You know, he talked about how Matthew McConaughey's dad broke his mom's finger, and there was clearly domestic abuse there. Wolfgang Van Halen, I get that because his dad just passed, so I understand that. Eddie Vedder, there was questions about his real father and how he never knew him until towards the end. His mom hid the fact that his stepfather. Eddie didn't know it was a stepfather. Eddie thought it was his birth father until he found out later it was not. But they're all fascinating interviews, but I just don't get the point of focusing on trauma in someone's childhood 4 interviews in a row. It's like you can tell a great interview and a great story about somebody without having to go there every single time. To me, it just screams of why are you doing it? Are you doing it for attention? Are you doing it to get a reaction? I don't know. Like, when I ask questions, it's because I want to know what that person thinks, what they believe. But when you get that deep and that personal 4 times in a row, it's like, okay, let's call an audible here, Howard. Let's not. And it's not like he asks them and he gets out. Like, it's not like he says, like, talk to me about your childhood and then ask one more follow up. He dwells in it. He talks about his guests, some of the guys I just mentioned, needing therapy and that he would be completely messed up if he went through. Like, the interview goes somewhere completely insane. And I love Howard. He's very talented. I can't understand where he's going with all this stuff. He gets in that that dark area. I mean, granted, it's part of somebody's life, so I understand the possibilities of going there. But he stays there, and he stays there, and he's asking questions, and he's asking questions. And, we're 10 minutes into questions about childhood trauma that it's just a very awkward and uncomfortable place to be. And I never want people to feel that way in my interviews. I want them to be like, oh my gosh, I get the importance of that. Oh, okay, that makes sense to me. But to each their own. I am certainly not criticizing Howard. He's an immense talent, and he's probably our best interviewer. Letterman is up there too, two of the greatest of all time. But so many people have told Howard he's the greatest interviewer. I wonder if he's asking these questions because he sincerely cares about the answers, or there's other things involved, or he wants to get reactions, as I mentioned. Who knows? But anyways, I am so happy that you're listening to me and the questions that I formulate. And by the way, I have a long way to go with formulating my questions. I have a long way to go with the way I speak. I stutter. There's long pauses between my questions. I say a lot. I often look for the right words to say. There's pauses there. So believe me, I got my work cut out for me. There's no question. And the fact that I look at people and who's listening, and not specifically who's listening, but the numbers of the people listening, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that people are taking time out to see what's going on in the Monday Morning Critic, and that does mean the world to me, all my flaws and all. So thank you for that. And without any further ado, here is Alar Kivilo. Enjoy. My next guest is an award-winning cinematographer. Some of his filmography includes A Simple Man, The Blindside, Frequency, and so many more. He is so very talented. Please welcome Alar Kivilo. Alar, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Alar, and did I pronounce your last name correctly? It's Kivilo, right? I said that correctly?
Yes, fairly correctly. It's Kivilo, but you were very close.
Okay, good, because I worry about that because my pronunciations are very phonetical and they're not good. So you do have an interesting life outside of your wonderful work and the work that I've come to love over the years. And I hope I'm piecing this together because one of the parts of the pleasure that I get as a podcaster is that I learn about people. In this case, you. I learn about countries like Estonia, which absolutely fascinate me. But you were born in Montreal, and then you moved to Toronto at like 16, 17. Do I have that part correct of your life, Alar?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I was born in Montreal, in the English-speaking part of Montreal, and then moved to Toronto, and then 23 years ago, I moved to LA.
Yeah, and the other part that I have to kind of dovetail on that is that I think I have this right too. You learn Estonian first, then English at 6, and then French a little bit after that. Do I have that timeline accurate? Yeah,
that's correct. Basically, my parents. They were probably around 14, 15, and they escaped from Estonia at the end of the war, or during the war, and they both went to Sweden where they met, and then it was a tricky time at that point. The Swedish government was starting to send some Estonians back to Soviet Estonia. And so people got scared. So my parents got on a ship and came to Canada, and that's where I was born.
Yeah, and I always find those stories amazing. I'm not going to pretend like I know the history of Estonia, but I think there's been conflicts over the years with the Soviet Union / Russia. That's kind of been the primary conflicts that Estonia has had over the years. Am I correct with that, Alar?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, Estonia was one of those a handful of small countries that came into being in around 1918. They kind of enjoyed freedom for about for a very short time, and then they were invaded first by the Soviet Union, then by the Nazis, and then by the Soviet Union again, and then it became 50 years of occupation, and in 91 it became independent again.
So you go to Estonia, and I hope I have this right too, for the first time in 1972. Am I right with that?
Your information is perfect. Yes.
Yeah, and you kind of you get a sense when you're there. And by the way, for those listening, Alar is talking to me. You are in Estonia right now, right?
That is correct. Yeah.
So
I'm here.
Do you split time between LA and Estonia? How does that work?
Basically I've been coming here, and when my daughters were younger, we would always come here in the summer, and we'd spend the full summer here. The kids would go to camp here, and it was a great way for them also to learn the language and to get to know the culture and just to see a bit of the old world as opposed to the new world, to get a sort of a smattering of both. And I've been lucky to kind of straddle those two worlds too, living in North America and then spending my summers here. So this has been going on for quite some time now.
Yeah, and to go back a little bit, because I'm kind of hopping around a little bit here. You go back in 1972, as we talked about, people seemed serious and reserved. I was reading an article, and I to myself, I'm like, I think I would be serious and reserved too if I went through what most Estonians had gone through at that time, right? I mean, is that the way to look at that? The way people felt,
That's correct. I mean, when I first came here, it was the height of the Soviet occupation, and it was very, very gray. People weren't very happy. There was political sort of banners hanging everywhere. I remember it was quite disconcerting getting off the ship when I arrived here, because back in the day you couldn't even fly here. You had to take a ship from Helsinki, and when I landed, I had to go through about 3 passport controls, and all the soldiers, were carrying submachine guns. It was kind of scary.
Wow.
But it was the land that I had heard about, from my parents since I was a kid. And as you mentioned before, yes, I mean, I didn't speak English till I was about 6. So it was a strong part of my heritage and upbringing. So to actually finally come and see the place in person was a big moment.
Right. No, understandably. And I have to say, what struck me most about the country itself, Estonia, is how much it's battled back. I mean, you look at it now, it's got almost 100% literacy rate. You and I are using Skype right now. That was primarily, and I believe men from Estonia created that. The public transportation, the beauty of the country, the islands, the 50% of its forest, all this very successful at the Olympics. I found all this stuff just amazing, and I just found that I feel like I don't know a lot about Estonia, but I feel like my takeaway is that the people fought back, and the way it is in 2020, it's come a long, long way, Alar.
It really has come a long, long way, and actually, one fact that I'm maybe the most proud of is that the way the people regain their independence, very often, to get control back of your country can end up in violence. But the Estonians basically sang their way to freedom. There's a strong tradition of singing every 4 years. They have a big singing festival, where in the choir, there's about 35,000 singers and hundreds of thousands of people, come to listen. But they use singing as part of their quest for freedom, and maybe the most significant thing that was done during the time, because the 3 Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, were kind of in the same situation, and as a protest, they actually held hands from all the way from Tallinn all the way to Vilnius. So one unbroken human chain of hands. I forget how many million people it was, but that was. So it was this sort of non-violent way of reaffirming their place in the world. And you're right, it's now a very advanced country. It's a very IT country. I mean, the voting takes place online. Pretty well everything takes place online. Nobody uses cash anymore. Everything, you do through your cell phone, parking, everything, you name it. It's very, very modern.
Yeah, and amazingly, it's amazing. It's almost, I cannot believe I didn't know any of this stuff. I'm embarrassed that I didn't know any of this stuff before because it's so, it's so well known. It's such a wonderful country. And I would be remiss if I did not bring this up. Getting into your wonderful career, is that this week you are receiving, I hope I have the award correctly, the Talent Lifetime Achievement Award. Is that correct?
And what it is actually is and I'm actually, it's been going on for quite some time now, but there's the Dublin Black Nights Film Festival, which I guess in the past 5 years or so, I might be wrong, but it's considered an A-list film festival along with Cannes and Toronto and Venice and Berlin. So it's an A-list film festival, and they're giving me a Lifetime Achievement Award. I feel a bit like I still have a lot to do, but it's a nice shot in the arm to be recognized like this. And what's really exciting is the list of people I'm joining. There's Lee Volman, Max von Sydow, Istvan Shpo, Ari Kaurismäki, Arvo Pärt, the list goes on and on. And so to be included among those people receiving that award is quite an honor. So yes, this Friday I go on stage and I accept the award. And every year they give one award to an Estonian, and then one sort of more of an international award. And the international award this year is going to Margaret von Trotta, a German director.
Wow, and a very well-deserved award. So congratulations again, Alar. I'm very happy for you. Just a side note here, Tallinn is also the capital of Estonia, right?
That is correct. Yes.
So, I know my. See, from this, Alar, I'm going to know more about Estonia than I think I know about my own history. So that's a good thing.
That is.
So it starts off for you early on, where I know you still love art, but you love drawing, and then you kind of gravitate to photography. How does that happen for you, Alar?
It started very simply. I was just given a camera when I was 16, and as a present, and I just started taking photos. To this date, I don't remember the exact moment where that shifted from still photography to cinematography. But it happened fairly early on, and I became quite driven to become a cinematographer.
How difficult has the road been for you? I mean, with anything that's worth something, the road is obviously, most of the time, whether it's an actor, director, whatever one's path is, I always feel like there's a lot of sacrifices along the way. How difficult has that road been for you to where you are today?
It's hard to say that something's difficult when you love it so much. I feel very fortunate that at this stage of the game, being given a Lifetime Achievement Award, that I can actually say that I still have a passion for filmmaking and for cinematography, and not many people have that privilege of saying that they actually have spent their life doing something that they really love to do. So I've been very lucky. Of course, it's all been very hard work. It's the lifestyle of a filmmaker is a bit challenging when you have a family. Trying to find that right balance between your family life and your professional life. I've been lucky that I've been able to make that work as well. It hasn't been hard. It's been a lot of hard work, and it's been a long time. And but it's, you know, every movie brings with itself its own challenges, its own set of problems. But that's part of the joy too, is solving those problems. And the other thing I'd say is that I haven't done this alone. The whole career. I've worked with great directors, great actors, great crew members, and that's the joy of filmmaking in a way, is that collective teamwork aspect of it. So it's been a great ride, with all these wonderful people that I've met and have worked with me along the way.
Yeah, certainly it's a collaborative effort. I absolutely understand that. But personally, from your end, is it a blend of a love for art and a love for movies? Is it kind of a blend, Alar? Is that? I mean, I know it's many other things, but for you personally, would you say it comes from a love of art and a love of movies, and that kind of meshes together for you?
I think I've always been, right from the get-go, I've been an artistic person. I'm drawn to. I'm drawn to art, to music, to painting, to photography, to literature, to poetry, anything to do with the human soul, or anything to do. I mean, I think art is a pretty noble pastime it tries to find, at least in my opinion, it finds the beauty in things, but even more importantly than that, it finds what's common between us, and to find these connections between different people, different cultures, and that's always been exciting to me. And I feel filmmaking in a way is a very powerful medium for doing that. In a way, the way a film grabs an audience and pulls it into this different world, a different set of circumstances, different characters, different problems, some that you can identify with, some that you can't. It's pretty amazing. And there's also something, I think, very primal about going to the movies, especially, going to the movies, where you walk into the cinema and you're sitting there with hundreds of people and the lights dim down. There's something akin to sitting by a campfire, at night under a starry sky, and somebody starts telling you a story and you're spellbound by it. There's something very primitive to it. And I think the human need for storytelling, for telling stories and for listening to stories and to being moved by stories, is something that I don't think will ever go away. So again, it's been sort of a privilege to be a part of a medium that I think really thrives in this aspect.
No, that is so beautifully said. And I have to say, Alar, one of the things that I was disappointed was there's a release of Wonder Woman 2. And then they said that while it's going to be released in theaters, that it's also going to be showing on HBO. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate the HBOs and the Netflixes and the Hulus of the world. But I also feel like movies were made to be seen in a theater. And that's part of I mean, there's many reasons why I hope the virus is done with for good. I hope that day comes sooner than later. But one of the biggest affected by that is the movie theater business, and I just feel like films were made to be seen in that forum, and that to me is sad to see it, where it is now. But my hope is that it comes back, because that is the ultimate. That is where movies were meant to be seen, in that environment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, to a certain point. The thing that is most primary really are the stories, and to be moved by stories, and to create an emotion for the artist, to create an emotional impact for the audience. Absolutely, I think there's some movies that they just have to be on the big screen, and some more intimate films, they can survive, the other places to see it. And it is, I must say, from a creative person's point of view, a lot of these, I've worked a lot of, I've done many HBO films, and I've done a bunch of Netflix films. And what I've found with these streaming companies is they really honor and respect the filmmakers and really give them a lot of creative freedom. And that's sort of, a bit of a trade-off. Obviously, the best is to work in that kind of supportive environment, but then also see the fruits of your label up on a big screen. And I guess to a certain point, that's at least Netflix has definitely been doing that. I guess some of the we just need a longer theatrical window, I think, would be nice.
No, that's well said, too. I agree. Netflix has provided so many opportunities, as has Prime and these other networks. But I just, in my heart, Alar, I just hope people don't give up on the movie theater. I hope people give it a chance to breathe, give it a chance to rebound, because the day that we don't have movie theaters is going to be one of the saddest days of my life, quite truthfully, Alar.
I totally agree. And then there's certain, people have asked me, like in the past couple of years, what's a favorite film, and a film that I really loved was Cuarón's Roma, and that film just needs to be seen on the big screen, because first of all, the sound, the way he used sound, how it travels through the whole theater, and just the incredible detail of the backgrounds and the background action and everything. That is something that you have to be and see it on a huge scale, so that you can actually almost pan around the. That's the exciting thing about a film, is that it should be immersive. That you're really dragged into this event and into this other world. And I think, in a way, the bigger it is, and there's also something about the collective aspect of it too. The fact that you're doing it with a bunch of strangers in a big hall, that's powerful in itself.
Yeah, it's well said. Alar is obviously I know what a cinematographer is. I mean, they are vital in the movie making process. Absolutely vital for those of you listening. How would you, the way I explain a cinematographer to people that, they kind of know what it is, but they, a director of photography, they get it. But I feel the best way to explain it to somebody in layman's terms is that it's like a cinematographer fills the canvas for the audience. They feel what it should look like. It's the artist. Is that an accurate way to look at it?
I think you're close. You're close. It's slightly broader than that. I think basically what we do, and actually I'll preface this by what Vittorio Storaro has always said, that cinematographers write with light, which I love that expression, because we do use light. But also we have a bunch of other tools at our disposal. We have, composition, choice of lenses, colors, movement, whether it's black and white or in color. There's a ton of tools that we use, but we really use all these tools in service of the story. We are there to, as you're saying, we create a visual context for the story, but also for the actors to live in. We create the space that the actors live in, and by doing that, we're also we're sort of magnifying, playing counterpoint to what the actors are doing. We're part of the same thing that the actor is doing, the cinematographer is doing. So in a way, we're very tightly intertwined, and really, it's hard to separate the two. And in fact, a lot of people don't realize this, but I like to talk about it, is that I think actors and cinematographers have the very same approach to preparation to a movie. When I'm prepping a movie, I sit there, I spend a lot of time by myself, looking at photos, researching the period, listening to music, etc. But then I also sit with the director and we go through the script, scene by scene, finding out what every scene is about and what it should convey to the audience. And basically, we're loading up the hopper, and I'm loading up my hopper with so many images and instincts and information. And the actors are doing exactly the same thing. They're going deep into their character. They're researching the period. They're looking at costumes. They're talking to people who lived maybe in this world. They're basically just filling themselves with as much emotion and information as possible. So we both do that. And then it's the day of the shoot, and then we just forget about it all. Then it's pure instinct. It's we look at what each other is doing, and we're almost making music with each other. We're almost dancing with each other. So it becomes a very sort of instinctual and gut reaction type of approach then, because you've done all that work before, which is still inside you somewhere, but you don't start sort of, grabbing hold of it. You just let yourself loose. And obviously the director does the same.
Yeah, and there's so much that goes certainly to being a cinematographer, absolutely. And, you mentioned the actors. I found it very kind. I was watching some speeches in the past, and Sandra Bullock, boy, did she pay you a very sweet and kind compliment about your work in The Blindside. Man,
that was such a great moment. I mean, that was so sweet of her to go on, on live TV and to single me out by name for what I had, how I had lit her. That was very, very sweet of her. And but she's that type of woman. And I've been lucky in that I've worked with a lot of people who are hardworking, fun-loving, really concentrate, but also have perspective on the biggest thing that I always tell my crew members, and when we get into conversations about film, is we are so lucky to be doing what we do, that there really shouldn't be any angst or any unsurmountable problem, because we're lucky. We're not. I remember as a summer job once I had to. It was an assembly line, and I had to put sort of non-slip rubber surfaces onto step stools all day long. Being a cinematographer is much more fun.
Yeah, and I almost feel like, Alar, and I say this on the podcast all the time, I feel like the two most underappreciated, not necessarily by cast and people that make movies, but by those on the other side. I think people appreciate it, but I feel like it deserves much more attention than it gets, are cinematography and movie scores. I believe both are vital to a film, and both, I believe, need to get all the attention in the world. Like, I think it was a few years back, the Academy was talking about doing away with cinematography. I mean, it was absolute insanity. It was insanity. I mean, it's cinematography is absolutely vital to a film. And do you feel like it's underappreciated or undervalued in any way?
Well, without us, it would be radio.
That's true.
Yeah. That's true. I don't think it's necessarily I think the main thing is that it's not quite understood what it is, and very often what happens is beautiful imagery, sort of spectacular shots, get confused with good cinematography. And for me, good cinematography is the work that gets sort of absorbed into the texture of the story and into what you're telling, and so it doesn't draw attention to itself. And it doesn't mean that it can't be beautiful. But I think beauty comes out of being true to the story and by supporting the actors, and out of that comes the real beauty. So it's not a very difficult métier to sort of grandstand if you want. You can make spectacular shots. It's not that tricky, but to tell a tale so that somehow the audience is just drawn into the story, and because that, for me, that's the worst thing that could happen at the end of a screening. People walk out, and instead of saying, "Boy, what a thing I just lived through," I'm still trying to digest it. I'm still, and the film sticks with them for a few days. That's what we want. I don't want people to come out of the movie theater and say, "Man, that was beautifully shot. God, that was beautiful cinema."
I get it.
And the same applies to music. I think you're very right. You're absolutely right that music is also it can be like a sledgehammer. It's not meant to inform the audience of how they should feel. It should also disappear into the texture of it. And probably the most interesting soundtrack on a movie in the past couple of years was what was the Denis Villeneuve film about the on the border?
Sicario?
Sorry. I just give you a bad yeah, that had a great score to it, actually. But what I was going to say is it was the Coen brothers film, based on the Cormac McCarthy book.
That's not Fargo, is it?
No, not Fargo. It's the one with God, I'm failing at my names here. Luckily, you can edit all this up.
No. I mean, I'm trying to think of it. I'll get it, and I'll cheat. No Country for Old Men.
Exactly, No Country for Old Men. That's sort of the trick question when you ask people, how did you like the soundtrack to No Country for Old Men? And people go, geez, I don't remember. Well, in that particular instance, there was none. They had no music. But what I'm talking about is that the soundtrack almost should have that same type of effect. Here, in this example, they actually didn't have a soundtrack or a score, but normally. So I think, the filmmaking is made of, and also, editing, production design, costumes, makeup. They all tap into what the story is about, and the more that every artist involved in a film is doing it for the right reasons and to further the story, the bigger the chances that the film will be very moving, and also it will be very beautiful. It'll be beautiful because it's a human experience. It's not beautiful because, there's a gorgeous anamorphic flare coming from camera left and there's golden light bouncing all around. It's not because of that. It's because we were moved.
No, that's so well said. And before I get into your work, it's phenomenal. You got me thinking. You mentioned Roma. We talked about the theaters earlier. One of the movies that I could watch obviously I've seen it the way it's supposed to be seen, and it's one of my all-time favorites. but I think this movie is so well shot. I could watch it on mute and just appreciate the way it's been shot. Road to Perdition has Sam Mendes, Roger Deakins, and Thomas Newman's score. I feel like the three of them make one hell of a team, and I just feel like, I mean, you have some work that is very similar to this. I just feel like it's just such beautiful movie making. You've had Simple Plan, same for you, Alar. I feel like I could watch that movie muted and just appreciate the way it's been shot.
I'm just going to correct you a bit. On Road to Perdition, it wasn't Roger Deakins, it was Conrad Hall. But you are right, it was beautifully shot, because it was a moving story, and I'm actually, it's kind of my regular gaffer, Rick Thomas. He actually was the Chicago gaffer on Road to Perdition, and he paid me the biggest compliment that you could ever give the cinematographer, especially for me, because my two heroes in cinematography are Gordon Willis and Conrad Hall. And he said that he saw a lot of similarities between the way I work and then how Conrad worked. And I think Conrad Hall has actually nicely articulated what that is. And he said, and I've always loved this, he said, God, you know what's tricky? It's I haven't been speaking English for a long time.
No, I get it.
Oh, okay, I remembered it. Yeah. Well, the saying that Conrad Hall said about his cinematography was that he presides over happy accidents, and I love that expression because it really is. It gets back to what I was talking about earlier about that you're just operating on instinct. You're not sort of super planning that the 2K is going to go exactly there. Conrad Hall was more about somebody one of the electricians, he asked for the 2K to go there, but on the way there the guy tripped or something like that, and then the 2K sort of bounced somewhere else, and he suddenly saw a glint that wasn't there before, and he said stop. So it's letting your instinct capture those magic moments that you wouldn't be open to if you hadn't actually prepped a lot. But on the set, it's just capturing. They often say that for actors. Capturing that lightning in the bottle, and that for me is really exciting. And a masterfully done film. Yeah, I'll tell you actually a shot from that film, from Road to Perdition, that I think is beautiful and got me so excited about it. And it's actually a very simple shot. As I recall, there's Daniel Craig is sitting at the head of a table, a big long table, and he's kind of jealous of the relationship that Paul Newman has with Tom Hanks, because Daniel Craig is Paul Newman's son in the movie,
right.
But he's very jealous of him. And there's a scene where the camera starts at the end of the table, and Daniel Craig is sitting at one end, and Paul Newman is escorting Tom Hanks out of the room and being very buddy with him, and the camera just keeps moving closer and closer and closer to Daniel Craig, and it gets really close, but the focus never goes on him. The focus stays on Paul Newman and Tom Hanks. And to me, what that says is Daniel Craig's being excluded from the relationship. So that's the camera telling the story. It was just a simple dolly into somebody. And you kind of wonder, I'm dollying into this guy who's framed in the middle and everything, but why is the focus still in the background? It's in the background because it was telling the story of Daniel Craig's jealousy. And that kind of filmmaking just gets me so excited.
Yeah, and shame on me, Alar, for messing up on that, because I talk about Road to Perdition and Shawshank so much. Conrad Hall is a legend, and I cannot believe I messed that up. Roger Deakins was Shawshank. I often get those mixed up. And to me, the other movie, Shawshank, is just another movie I could watch with the volume off.
Absolutely, beautifully done.
But let's talk about some of your wonderful work here. I watched Frequency again for the 500th time last night. You've done some wonderful things. It is my all-time favorite. The way that movie is shot, the way it is presented. It is such a beautiful movie. One of my all-time favorites. Frequency, just such a great film, Alar.
Well, thank you so much. It was interesting. It's people have asked me, what the process is, and when you're choosing a movie, and I always say that first of all, you start with the script, and there's got to be something in the script that lures you in. There's something that you can that's like a hook that captures you. There's something that you can that puts your mind and your emotions in gear. But then I also say that it's always important to meet with the director, obviously, but it's so important to feel if there's a chemistry and if you're talking the same language, and also to find out if this director has a certain take on the material. And I must admit, when I first read Frequency, just on the page, it kind of felt a bit far-fetched to me, a father and son talking through time. And I thought, I don't know. But I said, no, I'm going to go and meet with Greg Hoblit. And immediately when he started talking about it, I got hooked in. And I'm very proud of that film. I think it's a beautiful sort of tale of father-son relationship, done through this magical, ham radio connection. I'm very proud of the film, and I loved working with Greg, and we went on to do Hart's Ward together and some TV things, and it was a great relationship. So just as sort of you always have to combine the script with the person who's doing it, and to fully make up your mind about a project, because that's something we cinematographers are always it's tricky. Which project do you take? Which do you turn down? It's a challenge.
Yeah, in the wrong hands, Frequency would have been a disaster of a story to tell. But the way it's told, the way it weaves in and out and makes sense, it just works like clockwork. Just a couple observations, and I have one more question for you. Thank you so much for all this time, Alar. I look at your body of work, and it's amazing how eclectic it is, right? We go from Simple Plan to Frequency to Hart's War to Taking Chance to Bad Teacher. I mean, those are all different types of genres. You've all done beautifully. The other thing I noticed, too, is I look at just two in particular, Frequency and Simple Plan. It's no coincidence that both have a fantastic cinematographer and some top-shelf composers. In Frequency, it was the late Michael Kamen. In Simple Plan, it is the iconic Danny Elfman. I don't think that's a coincidence for why it's a big part of the reason why those movies work.
Absolutely. I mean, again, a score done properly is again something that you as an audience, you're not. See, as soon as you become conscious of something, sometimes I tell film students, I say I tell them when I go to see a movie, there's two things that could happen. One is I go to see the movie and I am totally sucked into the movie, and it becomes an experience, and I just love the movie. And if you ask me about the score or the cinematography or the makeup or the costumes about it, I'd say, I don't know, I just love that film. But I'm in a sort of, so going to see a movie for me is great, because if I don't have that, then I can actually sit back and just critique the cinematography or any other element of it. So I think again, score is very, very important in some, and to tell you this, I mean, I'm a musician. I not a professional musician, but I play, and so I think I have a good understanding of music, but I'm in awe of those guys who, again, they take the subtext of what's going on and either accentuate it or hide it, or again, like I said, counterpoint it. Again, what I think I'm always doing with my projects, and that's maybe why too. You mentioned that it's quite eclectic. I think I at least I try to give every project, or what drives me in every project is the story itself. So, and every story is different. So it's not like I have a signature look. Obviously, I am me, and I'm not somebody else. So there'll be some aspect of familiarity or similarity from one project to another. But generally, I try to avoid doing the exact same thing on every project.
Yeah, well said. My last question to you is, I know that movie making is a collaborative effort, totally understand that. But are you ever, and I think you touched on this a little bit, is it ever a concern for you, say if it's somebody new that you're working with, on, I don't want to say this because it sounds like, but I don't know how else to phrase it, how much control you have, right? Because you made it a beautiful point before of talking about how you're similar to actors. You guys research roles, you research people, you research the time. Is it important to you how much, and I hate to use the word control, but is it important how much input you have in what the movie looks like? Is that vital for you? Is that something that you, even if a director is willing to compromise, how does that process play out for you?
Obviously, when I do take on a project, I really care about it, and I want to execute all the things that my instincts bring forth. So I think it's not a question of control. I think it's really especially with younger filmmakers. I mean, I've been lucky to work with a bunch of people who, were doing their first film. Scott Frank did his first film. He was a brilliant screenplay writer, but he was, The Lookout was his first film as a director. Ross Katz, when he was doing Taking Chance, he was, he came from a producing background, Marie Antoinette and films like that. And it was his first time out. Kira Sedgwick, has been an amazing actress all these years. I shot her first time out, and I think what has been important in all of those is it's not that I grab control. It's I earn their trust. Mm. So when I'm working with them, I realize that they're the sort of extra, not strain, because I enjoy doing it, so it's not even strain, but the extra work I have to do is certain things might not be as familiar to them as it is to me. So again, it's this pre-production time where you explain things, and I do a lot of taking still photos. I also, when I'm sitting with a director, I will, I can't keep still. I'll act out parts and say, okay, you sit here, you pretend you're the camera here. I'm going to go to that door. I'm going to fall over here. And so I act it out, and I say, and I give them options. I say, now we'll try this. An interesting thing I did with Kira, actually, on her first film, because she is an actress, I suggested to her that we go through the script, and every scene, we come up with one word that is sort of the key word to that scene. And that was a great thing, both for her and for me. It's great when you walk into a room and this scene is about betrayal. Just that one word, betrayal, already gets your imagination in gear, and you're trying to, light it like betrayal or move the camera or place the camera in a way that supports that idea. So I would say, the control comes through trust and control again. Yeah, it's not, you find your collaboration through this close working relationship and being patient with people and finding different ways of communicating your ideas to them so it makes sense to them.
Yeah, the word trust certainly makes more sense than control. I definitely see that. I have to say, congrats again on the award, Alar, well deserved. And this is just a highlight, right? You have so much left ahead of you. We are so fortunate to be able to. I consider myself so fortunate to have seen your work. You're so very talented. I am so excited for not just your award, but for what the future brings. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.